Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Today, again, we are here, myself, Sushant, and I, with me, have Kedar, and we are going to discuss current affairs again. First of all, I would like to thank everyone for a very positive and a tremendous response that we got for our last video. Specifically, with all the insights and the inputs that we got from our friends, peers, and students, a very major part of current affair analysis includes various important events and editorials. So today we decided that we should indulge or we should ponder upon those issues and discuss for new aspirants how to go about various important issues, their analysis, and specifically editorial analysis from newspapers like Indian Express and Hindu. So I would request Kedar now to enlighten us or to help us to understand a certain very important event that occurred in this last week. That is the 75th year of United Nations and various events that surrounded that specific happening. Over to Kedar. Yes, good morning, Kedar.
Yeah, good morning and thank you so much, Sushant. And welcome back, viewers. Based on your tremendous response, we are now having the second session of Current Affairs, where I and Sushant, both of us, will be discussing and guiding you into how to analyze any given news. So I will be focusing upon the recently delivered speech by Honorable Prime Minister at the United Nations Economic and Social Council.
Yes.
One major aspect of preparing for current affairs, apart from the newspapers, is also these official speeches given by the Prime Minister, which we find that are missing in many of the analysis of current affairs of various online material and the analysis which is available. So this is an endeavor to guide you into how to analyze such important news in the context of the official speeches of the Prime Minister. We will discuss some key points of Prime Minister's speech. As Sushant rightly pointed out, that we are now in the 75th year of the formation of United Nations. So in that context, recently Prime Minister Modi gave a very heartening speech, a virtual speech. It was a short speech of 14 to 15 minutes, but in that very short span, he gave us a lot of details and some keywords which are really important from any examination point of view, and more so since we're talking about civil services, prelims, and mains today.
Yes. Yeah, true.
So, as you know, in the last session, we had discussed about while analyzing any news, the WH questions, that is who, when, what, where, how, why, and how, and the know how. So, as you can see on your screen, the topic mentions ECOSOC. So, immediately a thought should go in your brain about what is ECOSOC. Right? That is the first step how we start analyzing any topic. So ECOSOC is, that is, Economic and Social Council. Right? It was formed in 1945 as one of the 6 main organs of the United Nations. Now the other 5 organs are the Secretariat, the General Assembly, the Security Council, the ICJ, the Trusteeship Council, and so on. Okay. So regarding this speech, this year's theme was multilateralism after COVID-19 pandemic. What kind of UN do we need at the 75th anniversary? So this was a very important theme, and as most of you might be aware, that a lot of dynamic geopolitical changes are happening. On one hand, China is trying to dominate the world. On the other hand, United States is trying to come out of some of these institutions. So it's kind of a very confusing situation when it comes to the global rule-based order.
Yeah.
And this is
It's a
where
multipolar world, actually. Multipolarity is something that is affecting every one of us. Yeah. Yeah.
correct, yeah. But in this context, Prime Minister Modi ji has set the right tone for reforming United Nations. That also I'll discuss. But first, we need to understand what is ECOSOC. It is Economic and Social Council. And one important fact which Prime Minister mentioned, which I think not many books have talked upon, and this is where these speeches are so important. That is, the first president of the Economic and Social Council was an Indian. right, in the year 1946. His name was Mr. Ramaswamy Mudaliar. So these are the key facts, which one usually never finds in the academic books. But sometimes these facts are mentioned by the Prime Minister or this president's speeches. So that is why these speeches are so important to be focused upon, right? And this fact also becomes so key from prelims point of view and other examination point of view.
True, true.
And coming to the ECOSOC, that is, it is at the heart of the United Nations, where it talks about the sustainable development, right, in terms of economic, social, and environmental. So it has a very key role to play for shaping the sustainable development and the SDG goals. Now, for those who are very new to this topic, let me just give you a brief introduction about sustainable development. That it is uh, a very key topic these days. That every development has to be sustainable in the sense that our resources are limited in the context of climate change, global warming, overexploitation of natural resources. United Nations has been talking about sustainable development since the 1990s, and from 2016 to 2030, we are the entire world is looking forward to achieve the 17 key sustainable development goals that will in a way help the world to come out of various issues like poverty, women's issues, jobs, renewable energy, climate change, etc. In the next slide I'll talk about that. So that is the key function of ECOSOC. That is what you need to understand before even going to dissect the Prime Minister's speech, right? So now we come up to the next part. That is, okay, once we know that ECOSOC talks of sustainable development, then we need to understand what are those 17 key goals which are important for every country today. And the Honorable Prime Minister made a very pertinent point that since uh, Indian population caters to 1/6 of the global population, right? So when India achieves its sustainable development goals, it also helps the world to achieve the sustainable development goals. So that is why India is a key player in this aspect, right? So these are the 17 SDGs which are going to be a guiding light for governance and making government policies for all the countries. And recently, Niti Aayog, which is a very important think tank which came after Planning Commission, has talked of how India is planning to achieve each of these 17 sustainable goals and our national policies to achieve each of them. Right? Like, for example, Prime Minister also mentioned about Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, the world's largest sanitation program, which is a part of goal number 6, that is clean water and sanitation. When you talk of any policies related to women's issue, they come into goal 5. And when we talk of the smart cities project, so it comes in the goal number 11, that is sustainable cities and communities. So each of these goals has a corresponding national policy, national government scheme to achieve that. That is the interlinkage which we were talking about in the previous lecture, which one needs to discuss and analyze, right, in this context of Prime Minister's speech. So I come to the important facts which Prime Minister mentioned, and I'll just have a quick overview. Then we'll discuss some key lines also which he mentioned. So as he rightly pointed out, that India is home to 1/6 of humanity, and we are following the principle of taking all the countries together. That is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and Sabka Vishwas also. That is what the Prime Minister reiterated, that this is not just for our domestic policies, but this also holds true for the global rule-based world order. Right?
True.
As you might be aware, Sushant, that we also are in the 150th birth anniversary year
True.
of
Yeah.
Mahatma Gandhi, and that
True.
is where Prime Minister mentioned about the world's largest sanitation program, the Swachh Bharat Mission.
Swachh Bharat
And
Abhiyan.
yeah, correct. And he also talked of how India could achieve sanitation up to almost 100% of the villages, right? And in a short span of 6 to 7 years, we could achieve this target. Obviously, these programs have been carrying out for a long year, but in the last few years, this mission has been a flagship
Very
program.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah, true, very
a
important.
flagship program.
Is very, matlab, in that light also, see, many things can be connected with this. Gandhi's vision of Sarvodaya, Gandhi's vision of self-inclusive villages, Gandhi's vision of cleanliness. So all
Cleanliness,
these
yeah,
things,
that is very
yeah, all
important in
these
this
things
context. Yeah,
are very relevant. India has been a very active, what you can say, part, or our narrative simultaneously agrees with the international narrative
yeah,
of sustainable development. So
correct.
that has been a very important contribution that we have made to all these platforms. So you
True.
rightly said that Prime Minister has been keen on highlighting all the SDGs and
Yeah,
how India is a contributing factor to those. Yeah, please carry on. Yeah,
yeah. So that is how, in terms of the Swachh Bharat mission, and if you look at the other key aspects, that is
yeah.
the self-help
Self-help group.
groups. That is
True.
70 million women are part
Hmm.
of the self-help group today because of the various livelihood missions carried out. So even they cater to some of the key sustainable development goals. Then we also have the Jan Dhan account,
Yojana. Yeah,
which yeah,
yeah.
which made possible for the poor people to have new bank accounts, right, at almost zero cost, right? They don't have to
True.
invest anything.
True.
So
True.
this played a very crucial role in the context of financial inclusion,
Financial
where
inclusion.
in the last few years 400 new million bank accounts were there. And one
Were
very
open.
crucial aspect which Prime Minister highlighted is that out of these 400, more than 50% are held by in the name of women.
Women.
So that is a very important aspect which he highlighted and
And
comes
that
in.
has been an important part of India's social sector program. It's very woman centric because Prime Minister
Correct.
truly
Yeah.
believes that the real anchor of any house is a woman, the leading lady
True.
of the house. Plus, I would also like to highlight the JAM Trinity, the Jandhan, Aadhaar, and the Mobile Trinity, which has also been reflected into various
Yeah.
programs like Ujwala, or various, what you can say, social health programs like Janani Shishu Suraksha Karyakram, and other programs that the government has been carrying out. So
Yeah.
one can
Correct.
correlate, from aspirants' point of view, I would say one can correlate all these things through ECOSOC, which usually people don't. But if one
Correct.
is
Yeah.
aware enough, one can have a very deep connection and correlation, as it is very important for mains answer writing also while
True.
you are looking into these international news.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And talking of DBT, actually, your next, I think, Sushant, will be touching upon an editorial on
yeah,
agriculture.
which focuses on agriculture. True,
Yeah,
true.
and that is where also DBT has been playing. That is direct benefit transfer because of the Jandhan, Aadhaar, and mobile.
Yeah,
They, farmers are directly getting the money, and that is also an
money.
angle which Prime Minister highlighted very briefly. That is this Jam Trinity, as you rightly
Hmm.
pointed out, has been one of the key governance success, which
Innovations and success. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
which has prevented leakages, and the help is directly reaching to the bank accounts of all the beneficiaries.
Last mile delivery has been a very important thing with this government. And while writing
True.
answers, also, if you highlight, not in the sense of appeasing the moderator or like you're writing pro government, but what is
Yeah,
right, what has been working should be highlighted in your
correct.
answers. One should look
True.
into that also. Yeah,
Yeah. So I think, and then he came to the part of the that is the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, where
Awas Yojana.
40
Yeah,
million new homes would be completed by 2022. And he also highlighted that it is going to be the 75th independence year of India. So these targets become so important to be achieved by in the next 2 years, right? And then he came on to the carbon emissions, which is a topic
true.
very crucial in today's climate change and also for the sustainable development goals, which talk of the environmental goals. That India has been able to reduce 38 million tons of carbon
Carbon.
every
Yeah.
year because of the Ujjwala Yojana, that is
Ujwala and Saubhagya.
yeah, Saubhagya.
LPG.
Ujjwala, yeah,
LPG.
correct. Ujjwala is for the LPG, as you rightly said, and Saubhagya, that is Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana.
Yeah, yeah.
Where people won't have to rely on the kerosene lamps, the coal, right, and clean energy will be provided to all households, right.
All the people, how all the households.
So
True.
these are two crucial points. And then coming to the last, the renewables sector. In last current affairs session, we talked of the Rewa solar power plant.
Reva Solar. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where the 450 gigawatt target which you have set for renewable. In that, the REVA, which is for the solar, will play a very crucial role in achieving this target, and we have miles to go in that. And the Prime Minister finally talked of one very key fact, that is the bond challenge. The bond
Hmm.
challenge for the new comers into this process is to restore the degraded land, right,
True.
which is there because of the global warming, the degradation which is happening because of man-made reasons. So India has very ambitiously set up a target of 26 million hectares of restoration of the
Restore.
degraded land by 2030. Right. So these are the important facts within just a speech of 14 to 15 minutes he has highlighted. And finally, coming to some of his very important lines, and then I'll pass on the baton to Sushant. Uh, that is the speed and solidarity in which India is helping to cater to the natural disasters and disaster management to various countries, right? In the neighborhood, in the context of
True.
neighborhood
True.
first policy, which we have, and also to all the other countries in the context of COVID-19 pandemic, where India has been supplying so many medical supplies and especially the hydrochloroquine tablets,
Tablet.
which were said to be used as a prophylaxis for the treatment of COVID-19. Then he also talked of the SARC emergency
COVID
fund,
emergency fund, which was
right,
created, right?
right, where India took the initiative. And a few more important lines which I have highlighted here, that India firmly believes that the path to achieve peace and prosperity is through multilateralism. Right? That is what Sushant also highlighted, that the multilateralism part is something we need to highlight. And finally, he talked of how the world can come together to solve the common problems, right? And he also reiterated the Atmanirbhar Bharat program. That is where we are going
True.
to come as part of the global economy, not just to give impetus to our local economy, but we will be a part of the global economy while uh, improving our own domestic programs. Finally, he ended upon few key aspects like a human-centric globalization. These are, such important lines, Sushant, that is, which can be used in answer writing as well. That these speeches provide us with a treasure trove of so many important key sentences. Okay, so while, as Prime Minister rightly pointed out, we are in the 75th year of United Nations, the COVID-19 pandemic sets a right context for another reforms and the rebirth of the organization. So this rebirth and reform is very crucial in the context of the Cold War kind of situation, which is going on between China and the United States, or we can say
True.
with the rest of the world. And
Yeah.
that is where Prime Minister Modi reiterated this context of reform. And he said, let us not lose this chance, because just like Second World War set the context to redefine the global rule-based world order, COVID-19 gives us another opportunity to reform this United Nations system, which is somewhere
Very true.
losing its relevance. And India has also been elected to the United Nations Security Council. That is the non-permanent part. We have the permanent commission, the UNSC seats, that is the 5 countries are there, and 10 non-permanent members are there, out of which few of them retire or have to pass the baton to another countries. And
Yeah.
India got elected to the non-permanent seat last month with an overwhelming majority of over 180 seats. That's a good sign for India. It shows
Yeah.
the amount of diplomatic clout we have in the international sphere.
Yeah. Geopolitically, a very good move, actually. Yeah.
Correct. And finally, Prime Minister Modi, as always, ended on a very optimistic note that India is always committed to maintaining global harmony, to follow the UN system, and we are also very much committed to improve the socio-economic equity, preserve the nature, and play our full role to support the UN agenda. So that is how, in a short span of 14 to 15 minutes, Prime Minister Modi talked about the UN ECOSOC, the Sustainable Development Goals, India's policies like Sobhagya, Ujjwala, DBT, which we discussed recently, and also he talked of the international rule-based order, which definitely needs to undergo rebirth and reform in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. So this is how we need to analyze such important speeches given by
Very true.
the Honorable Prime Minister. So back to
Very
you,
true.
Sushant. I think you can now touch upon the other aspects of how to cover the editorials part.
Yeah, thank you, Kiran. This has been really enlightening, and you have shown us that various initiatives or even meets that take
Yeah,
place or bilateral dialogues that happen, may it be G to G, B to G, or people to people, various
correct.
tracks of diplomacy that happen, and one has to cover that. IR has been a very important aspect of all GS preparation.
Yeah,
Now, what we will do is we will look into certain aspects of editorial analysis and how one goes about understanding editorials in various newspapers,
yeah,
and comparative analysis and correlation for your mains answer. We'll look into that.
yeah.
For this purpose, what I have done is I have chosen a few articles from Indian Express, and Mr. Ashok Gulati, as you can see, is a very important writer when it comes to agriculture and all those aspects that are there. And
Hmm.
why we have chosen these two particular articles? Because there is a sense of correlation between them. Both of them talk about the input and the output end of agriculture in India. And in light of present COVID crisis and also changing dynamics of agriculture, as Kedar rightly mentioned, that we are a nation of what you can say 121 million people and one sixth of the population. So we need to understand this, that agriculture or producing a quantifiable amount of food for everyone is a time that is very, it's a crucial thing that we should do focus upon as a nation also.
And I think to add a very emphasis on this topic and
Hmm.
to set the context, as the father of India's Green Revolution rightly
Yeah,
mentioned, that the future belongs to the nations having grains and not
grains,
guns. So
guns.
I
Yeah,
think on
MS
that
Swaminathan.
context, you can describe
Yeah.
this aspect
We are
further.
going to talk about Mr. MS Swaminathan and Norman Borlaug also when we talk about this.
Yeah.
One thing I have to make clear, that whenever someone talks about how current affair analysis has to be done or how to decode it,
Mhm.
let's right away jump into this. One thing I would like to make clear here, that what Mr. Gulati is trying to emphasize in this first article, Unshackling for Self-Reliance. So this is a very recent article that came into Indian Express, where he talks about agricultural inputs, government reforms, and how private sector plays a very important role, and what kind of regulations have been playing. Now, if I compare what Kedar has been saying in sense of UN and speech given by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, two, three things can be correlated here. This is how you correlate. Matlab, if someone has been reading that speech and excerpts from that speech have been analyzed by someone, one would immediately realize that this article specifically focuses on the sustainable development goals, especially the second goal, that is zero hunger. The
Yeah.
third goal that is good health, because nutrition is something which is very crucial for a demographically positive nation like us. And the 13th goal, which is climate action, because agriculture is a very important topic when it comes to climate change or global warming or
Yeah.
anything that relates to biodiversity, because
Because
agriculture is a very
yeah,
key role.
and it
Kedar
is a
being
major source
yeah,
of carbon emissions also.
carbon
Agriculture.
emissions also,
Yeah.
agriculture also. So based on that, if we look into agricultural inputs, and specifically when the author focuses here, and if you see that three areas: seeds, fertilizers, and tractors being the machinery. Now you have to understand this. When I talked about correlation in our last talk, I said that every article, even if overtly seems to be dedicated for a certain topic, for instance, where would this fall? And we correctly can correlate this to what we discussed in our last lecture, Kedar. If you remember, we
Yeah.
had talked about religiously following the mains as well as the prelims syllabus for understanding or having a depth in your current affair analysis, right?
True. Yeah.
So if you observe this, specifically the fourth and the fifth point of your GS3 paper, which focuses on technology, economic development, biodiversity, and agriculture.
Yeah.
So in that we have major crops, cropping patterns, various parts of country, different types of irrigation, agricultural practices, indirect farm subsidies, minimum support price, functionalities of agriculture, mechanization of agriculture. So all these points or technology missions which are related to agriculture, all
Mhm.
these points directly relate to this article. So when
Yeah.
someone opens the paper and sees this, he or she immediately can correlate only if they have read the syllabus carefully. So I would
Very
emphasize
true.
the point again and again, that you have to read the syllabus. If you don't read the syllabus, if you miss out on the intricacies and the various minor points or minute observation of the syllabus, you won't understand what articles are essential. Because as they say, the greatest strategy or the major strategy is to understand what not is to be done. What
Yeah,
we have to do, everyone talks about it.
true.
Like that, I would like to thoda sa paraphrase or rephrase it and said ki what is not to be read in
Yeah,
UPSC is also very important.
it's very
Everyone tells you
important. True.
read this, read that, read this book and all the notes that come. But I would say what not to read is also essential. And when you understand that only when you religiously and thoroughly analyze the main syllabus. Coming back to article, Kedar, I would like to focus that first the author focuses on seeds and how seeds have been a crucial input, and how green revolution, so the very idea of green revolution. So as one says that one should go deep into the article, research a bit. So three things I would say that one should study when the word green revolution pops up. First is the high yielding seeds he mentions also. So Sonara 64 IR 8 rice seeds here are very important seeds that have been developed by Indian Council of Agricultural Research. I'll come to that in a minute. But then one looks into green revolution. What green revolution has given us? Green revolution has given us high yielding variety of seeds. Green revolution has given us irrigation. Green revolution has given us work by people like Norman Borlaug and MS Swaminathan, who changed and revolutionized the agriculture in India. So I would urge anyone going for such articles should understand this phenomenon also. So every article you would find a phenomenon. For instance, if you're reading about Israel Palestine conflict, if you're reading about Indo Pak conflict, now this is a very different topic, this is diplomacy. Or if you're reading about North Korea or South Korea, a word like Cold War would pop up. So one has to understand what Cold War is. These are phenomena. This has happened in human history and have been proved to be a turning point for what we are today. So one should look into green revolution. Understanding such kind of phenomena which are hidden in the whole of the web of the article is also very essential. Plus, see, there are two things which you would come across in both these articles. The second article is about Atmanirbhar in agriculture, which resonates with Prime Minister's call for Atmanirbhar Bharat. But I would tell you, see, there are facts and there is information. I'll give you an example. Information is green revolution. Green revolution is a phenomena would give you a certain amount of information about agricultural practices in India. Whereas these terms like Sonara 64, IR8, rice seeds, or India exposed seeds to its neighbor countries even during lockdown, this is the information that you get. Or
Yeah,
for instance, fertilizers or statistics that you see here, which is related to fertilizer, are facts that you have. And when you combine those facts with analytical information that you get, for instance, the author here highlights that during Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's what you can say, his period as a
yeah, it's
prime
tenure.
minister,
Yeah,
tenure as prime minister, I was going to say regime, but tenure as prime minister, BT cotton in India saw a very exponential rise, and India became a net largest exporter of cotton.
yeah,
But
true.
as the regime changed, as further governments came, there was a slump in cotton exports, basically due to the bad publicity that the BT got, genetically modified GMO crops got, and how BT cotton is now illegal, and how you see a revolution in Maharashtra where BT cotton is illegally grown by the farmers. This has been a recent news. So this analytical part one has to understand, and one has to understand that how government has maybe ideological or political or compulsions where it blinkers itself from scientific researches and not try to implement new technology in India. Then he turns to fertilizers and how fertilizers have been an important part or aspect of agriculture in India. He highlights the importance of NPK fertilizers and further goes and highlights that how new technologies that have been emerging in India can help us to turn out to be a major fertilizer producer, and how we can also export fertilizer to other countries, especially the ASEAN bloc or especially Asia.
Yeah,
Okay?
true.
And further, he goes about exploring how machinery, now farm machinery also resonates with what you call is Make in India and Make
Mhm.
in India mission and agriculture. So now you see collaboration of two concepts. You have economics on one side where you have macroeconomic concepts like make in India and manufacturing dynamics. So you can go and research into that also. Whereas you can come back here on an agricultural front, you have concepts like direct benefit transfers, you have concepts like Jan Dhan Aadhar Mobile, the Jam Trinity concept, and what you can say, the Jan Dhan Yojana that is there, and combine all these and in a broader sense study something called as inclusive economics or
Yeah.
inclusive agricultural economics, right? So, and when you study seeds being exported to ASEAN, tractors being exported to ASEAN, one can understand the international relations dynamic in the article. So one article which seems to be talking about agriculture gives you information about diplomacy, gives you information about science and technology, gives you information about economics, gives you information about new trends in agriculture. And through this, you can have a multifaceted or a multi-dimensional study of various subjects.
True.
So I would urge that whenever you study any article, for instance, and when he go to the second part,
I
where
think
he,
in this article, before we start with the
yeah,
second article, one
yeah,
very
yeah,
important aspect of the first article was the public-private partnership.
yeah, and
Yeah, so which is, I think, very crucial for agriculture, because that is where I think you were pointing to, Sushant, rightly, that when it comes to economics of agriculture, the government is somewhere wary of the
yeah, yeah.
profitization or the capitalization which private companies have.
that
But
that
us,
that I was going to highlight actually when we were going to talk about the second article. He especially talks about the comparative advantage that we have
true, true, yeah,
as a upcoming manufacturing hub. And you rightly said,
yeah,
Kedar, that yes, collaboration with the private sector tends to increase our competitiveness in the market.
very true.
And what we should do, take advantage of this comparative, take benefit of this comparative advantage also. Plus, along with that, in sense of an environment and biodiversity, which is a very important topic, I would just briefly look into the second article because we have to keep it. The paucity of time also is
Yeah,
there. That how water plays an important role and how we should be prudent enough or we should be intelligent enough to grow only those variety of crops which save water, or rather we
very
should
true.
totally avoid growing the variety of crops which we, especially rice and sugarcane, which are heavily consume water.
Yeah,
Matlab,
water
you can
intensive
find a,
crops.
yeah, water intensive crops. So you can find a statistics here that 10-15% of the value of rice sugar produced per hectare, but important is leading virtual export of water, as 1 kg of rice requires 3,500 to 5,000 liters of water. From this we can understand that there's one more example that how Egypt has dealt with this comparative advantage,
Yeah.
that irrespective of or in spite of Egypt having a very good quality of cotton, because
Mhm.
Egyptian cotton is considered one of the best cottons in the world, they have actually stopped growing that cotton because cotton also requires a lot of water,
True.
and comparatively they are saving water, and water import concept also is to be studied.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to tell you here is, rather than going into the deep analysis, which obviously everyone would be doing, and I would be urging you to go through these articles. And Kedar has rightly pointed out that public-private or private partnership and supporting government or removing or liberalizing the norms which lead to private players to explore the agricultural market. That is the point I think, Kedar, you were making.
Yeah.
So
And one
that
more point, I think, Sushant,
hmm,
which is very important from examination perspective, is the
hmm,
statistics you have mentioned and highlighted in this article. They
yeah,
are very crucial for the mains answer writing. Just like you
hmm,
mentioned about the water intensive crops, one more
yeah, yeah,
statistic which is very famous is that most of the water in our country, that is more than 80 to 85% of
hmm,
the water,
hmm,
in fact, even 90% in some states, is utilized by agriculture,
yeah,
and
true,
the rest
true.
10% or 15% is remaining for our industrial and drinking water purposes. So I
True,
think these
true.
are the interconnections which you are also pointing
And plus,
towards.
you can highlight or focus on facts like this, which are resonating with the economic survey also, that how our
True.
exports and imports peak. The year agri exports peak 43.6 billion, where imports were 18.9 billion. And
Yeah.
questions do come, especially prelims, which focus on what has been the export basket, what has been the import basket.
Yeah.
Is there a cumulative growth in exports of agricultural goods or cumulative growth in exports of various other goods also?
Mhm.
Huh. And what we should understand is analytical part of it. So what I was trying to tell you, I have posted a few post-it notes also here, that
Yeah.
2 points come. One should analyze the article, that is a different fact, but my focus here is to make people understand, or make our friends understand, that how to go about it. So
Yeah.
first factor is that one should actively read newspapers and don't be just a recipient of news. Analyze it
Very
from
true.
various angles like we did, rather in the first article. And always a question would come that for repeated topics. Now here, when one reads about ASEAN,
Mhm.
when one reads about, maybe there is a very very what you can say, famous concept that keeps on bouncing here and there, and I think there would be 2 3 years that we would be hearing about it, rather a decade, that is demographic dividend.
Yeah.
Huh? Or when something like comparative advantage, or water based crisis in India, all these topics are
Mhm.
repeatedly covered. So there are issues
Very true.
basically which are, so one can go to monthly or weekly compilations to cover those.
Yeah.
And what I would like to conclude, or rather give you a hack that one understands, people are always looking for those hacks in everywhere. So I would like to say that when you read editorials, always remember this. This is a very crucial factor. I would stop sharing now. Yeah.
Yeah.
One very crucial factor, Kedar, is that we talked about facts, we talked about information. When one collaborates these two, when one gels your facts and information, and analysis leads you to knowledge. So when you digest the facts, when you digest the information, when you analyze the editorial, you actually get knowledge about the topic or the issue. And if you sustain that knowledge, what you gain is wisdom in the
Very
in the
true.
area. That
Yeah.
is how you become expert at answer writing. You just can't copy paste articles, you just can't copy, because you need to know when to write what
Yeah.
statistics to use where, what correlation to understand. Understanding questions also is very very crucial. In that context, I feel one should always analyze the facts and
Yeah.
information in a sense that they get digested, they get comprehended, and that leads to you having a permanent base of knowledge which can be augmented, or which can be added upon by other feeder material, and as you go along you read more and more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
I
I
think
think
Sushant,
that would,
you have
huh,
elaborated that very nicely. To just to sum it
huh,
up, what you said, that we need to
huh,
develop the wisdom, and that is
yeah,
what even UPSC is trying to test in the prelims
test that,
and mains, because
yeah,
everyone is going to read the same sources. But
same
what
sources,
makes the difference is how you derive the wisdom from the information which is given, and that
yeah.
processing of information is, I believe, our friends will now be able to understand with the help of this
There
short
is
video.
always, there is always been a debate that whether one should be a specialist or a generalist.
Mhm.
There are specialist services in civil services. We someday would be talking about those also. But I always feel that a generalist, like jack of all trades and master of some, not none,
Yeah,
some. You
yeah,
have to be
some,
master of some. So you have to keep that in mind, that you have to read. Now tomorrow there would be an article about physics, or there would be an article about environment and
yeah.
biodiversity,
Mhm.
and in that there can be an IR angle. For instance, I would just, because Kedar loves environment, I would quote again an environmental, that Amazon fires
Yeah,
that happened few months or maybe a year back, and how Jair Bolsonaro made it an international issue, and how then people focused on the geopolitics of it.
mm,
It is
yeah,
an
very true.
environmental
And
issue,
not
but it
just
has to.
Amazon fires, Sushant. We have the recently Siberian fires as well. That is
Siberian fires
turning
also.
into
Yes,
a
yes.
political snowball between all the Arctic countries,
Arctic
and
nations,
how
yeah,
to
Russia especially is very
affected by
actively
this. Yeah,
affected by this.
yeah,
So see, such issues you have to have a multi-dimensional approach. So don't analyze, rather do, sorry, I am saying don't rote, or don't just look. So rather analyze and try to build correlation and a web of information with multifaceted topics that you can study.
yes. So, एक तीर
Yes.
में multiple शिकार. That is what we need
Yeah,
to
yeah. Ek
do.
tir mein, not do multiple. That has to be some special tir, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think then, Sushant, we have an upcoming program about which you can talk and give us some
Yeah, yeah.
information, right?
Yeah,
And
so this gives me an opportunity to talk about something that we have been planning for days now,
mhm,
and I would like to tell our viewers who have been so supportive in this very small step that we are taking, and I hope this becomes very crucial for all the people and important for us also. So I would like to tell you guys about something that we have been planning for many days, and it is called Anvikshiki. Now, what is Anvikshiki? Anvikshiki basically means, it's a Sanskrit word which basically means critical thinking or insight in something. In Arthashastra, Chanakya writes that Anvikshiki iti prathama vidya, or Anvikshiki is the first trait that a person who is into governance, rather he implies that king should learn. But here we don't have kings, we have a democracy. So bureaucrats have to learn that. And on that basis, I thought that we should start a program, or we should initiate something which focuses on this trait of insight that one requires for civil services and other competitive exams that one has to face. So we are starting a Anvikshiki orientation e-course. Now, what is that? It will not only enable us to have essential skills for civil services, but also enable us to imbibe qualities, as well as it would give us a insight into what actually is required to be prepared for civil services.
Very true. And this is where I think wise words ace wants to be
Yeah,
different
wise words is
to impart the
impart
skills.
their skills. And basically, Anvikshiki also then would cultivate the core values or core traits, because when you prepare, there are many videos out there which talk about strategies to prepare for civil
Very true.
services. But I think rather than strategies, we should work on our skills, and through that skills we should change our core nature and enable us, or rather I would say empower each other to have a better shot at cracking the civil services.
True.
So under wise words, and especially under wise words ace, we are going to launch this e-course. We would have obviously inform you, or we would be coming up with various notifications. I urge you to follow our Instagram, Facebook, and other channels,
and the
such as
Telegram
YouTube,
also, which is given
Telegram
there.
channel also.
And mostly we'll be
it is
using Telegram to update you about all these upcoming sessions.
upcoming. So I would urge you all to join our Telegram channel. Plus, you should also follow the YouTube and other, especially our Instagram handle that is there, that would update you about all these programs. But I urge you to look forward to this, and it would really be a game changer for especially the new aspirants who want to take up civil services as a career path and want to empower them and have those skill sets and learn them, so that they can prepare for civil services in a better way. So please look out, share, subscribe, like, comment, tell people about our channel and our effort here, and do follow the Telegram channel, do follow YouTube channel, do follow our Facebook page also, so that you could be made aware of Anvikshiki as well, and you can look out for other videos or other such interesting discussions with my very enlightened friend here, Kedar, who always
likewise.
Likewise, I know.
And we are also going to share the Google Forms link very soon on our Telegram channel. So please subscribe to that Telegram channel, which is given in the description below, right? And also to the YouTube channel. And stay tuned.
Channel. And please stay tuned to this channel of ours, because this is where we can talk and interact with you. And as always, as we say, stay awesome. Thank you for your time.
And stay safe in this pandemic. Health is the first wealth. And please take care, wear a mask, maintain social distancing, and keep washing your hands, so that with all your health and sound approach to civil services, we can come up with more sessions. And looking forward to our very interesting and helpful Anvikshiki series coming up. So thank you so much, Sushant. We come to the end of this second session. Stay tuned and see you very soon.